Alright, so this video is pretty much going to be a small eyeshadow palette collection plus a declutter. I am going to be decluttering a few eyeshadows, and pretty much anything that can fit in my hand like so is going to be included in this video. So I'm going to go ahead and start off with the Juvia's Place Freak palette, and here are the shadows. Alright, and here I have the Profusion Spectrum palette. This is an all matte palette. Alright, and here are the Snap eyeshadow palettes by Fenty, and I have 7, which looks like this, number 3 palette, which looks like this, number 4 palette, which looks like this, and the number 2 palette, which looks like this, number 6 palette, which looks like this. Alright, so next I have the Magnifying Crimson palette by Rimmel. Next I have the Essence palette, the All About the Magical Forest palette, and I'm going to declutter this one. Next I have a Buxom palette. This is a palette that I pretty much picked the shadows, and here they are right here. Next I have the Wet n Wild eyeshadow trio palette. Next I have the Believe Beauty palette. Next I have the Full Spectrum So Saturated palette, and this is the Eclipse palette here. Next I have the Wet n Wild in the Smoke palette. I have a Bliss palette, and I'm going to keep this one for sentimental purposes. My daughter gave me this for one of my birthdays. I think it was my 43rd birthday or something like that. The next one is the Moiri A Dash of Gold, and here are the shadows. The next one is the Spice Edition palette by Rimmel. The next one is the LA Girl Inspiring eyeshadow palette, and here it is. The next one is the Extreme Access Pocket palette, and I'm going to declutter this one. The next one is the Extreme, oh I'm sorry, this one was the Paparazzi. Okay, and this one is the Walk of Stardom. I'm going to declutter this one as well. And this next one is another pocket palette, and this is the Red Carpet Premiere. And I'm going to declutter this one. The next one is a CoverGirl True Naked Jewels palette. Okay, and this one is another Mega Glow eyeshadow trio palette by Wet n Wild. Alright, this is a Pat McGrath mini, and this one is the Mothership Subliminal Dark Star palette. And this palette is very dirty and dusty. And here are the shadows right here. This next one is by Too Faced, and this is the Natural Eyes palette. And here are the shadows. This next one is by Makeup Revolution, and this is the Deep Dive eyeshadow palette. This next one is by LA Colors, and this is a matte eyeshadow palette. I'm going to declutter this one. This next one is another Moiri eyeshadow palette, and this is Midnight Whispers. And here are the shadows. This next one is by Natasha Denona, and this is her holiday palette, I think from 2017, and this is the Aries palette. This next one is the Joya palette by Natasha Denona. This is the Wet n Wild The Boo Crew eyeshadow palette. How do I open this? This next one is by Wet n Wild. This is the Wizards in Training This next eyeshadow palette is by Tarte, and this is the Dream Big eyeshadow palette. This is another Tarte eyeshadow palette, and this is the Rainforest of the Sea Volume 2. This is a Natasha Denona palette. This is the Mothership Sublime Bronze Ambition palette. This is the Too Faced Tutti Frutti Sparkling Pineapple palette. This next one is another Tutti Frutti. This is the Razzle Dazzle Raspberry eyeshadow palette. This next one is by Pat McGrath. This is the Mothership Subversive La Vie en Rose palette. The next one is another one by Pat McGrath. This is the Mothership Subliminal Platinum Bronze palette. This next one is by Wet n Wild. I'll go ahead and open that for you so you can see it a little bit better. This one is the Nabla Nude palette. There are the shadows. This next one is by Nickak, and this is the Metallic Radiant eyeshadow palette. And I'm gonna go ahead and declutter this one, not because it's not any good, it's just that it's just kind of has a smell to it. This next one is another one by Moira, and this is the Fearless Heart eye palette. This next one is by Okalan, and this is the Shine Easy Glam Product Secret. Anyway, this is supposed to be a knockoff, and I'm gonna go ahead and declutter this palette. This is another eyeshadow palette. This is the Rainforest of the Sea, and here are the shadows. This one is Bad Habit. This is the Supernova palette, and I'm going to declutter this one. This is another Rainforest of the Sea. I can't tell what, I think this is volume 3. And I sometimes like to use this palette as a highlighter. All right, this one is a LA Colors eyeshadow palette, and I'm gonna go ahead and declutter this one. This is one of the On the Run eyeshadow palettes, and this is the Detour palette. Another On the Run, this is the Bailout palette. This next one is another one. This is the Shortcut. This next one is by Lime Crime. This is the Venus X palette. This next one is another Venus X palette. This is another Venus X palette. This is another Nabla eyeshadow palette. This is the Corals eyeshadow palette. This one is by Revlon. This is the Color Stay Player palette. This is another one by CoverGirl. This is the True Naked Queenship palette. This is the Smashbox Bold Glitter palette. This is another Lime Crime. This is one of the Pocket Candy palettes, and this is, what is this? I can't even see these names on here. But anyway, this is the blue one. There's another Smashbox. This is the Major Metals palette. This one is by Too Faced. This is the Rainforest Sea Foil Finger Face and Eyeshadow palette. This is another Moira Like a Melody. This one is a Color Story Workshop Hues eyeshadow palette, and I'm going to declutter this one. This next one is a Butter London palette, and this is the Glazing Shimmering Eye palette, and I'm going to declutter this one. This next one is by Milani. This is the Bold Obsessions palette. And I'm going to declutter this one. This is another Pocket Candy palette by Lime Crime. This is another Nickak Radiant palette, and this is the metallic. And I'm going to declutter this one. Alright, so these next ones are the Huda palettes, Obsessions that I have. And this is the Smokes palette. This one is the Warm Brown palette. This next one is the Mauve palette. This next one is the Nude. I think this is the dark palette. This one is the Electric palette. This is the Obsessions palette. No, the Gemstones palette. This next one is the Emerald palette. And the next set of eyeshadow palettes are palettes that I pretty much made from the Anastasia Beverly Hills singles. So I'm just gonna show you the shadows. The next one, here is the next one, and here is the next one. The next palette is the Crystallized Eyeshadow palette by Smashbox, and here are the shadows. The next one is the Coffin Break by Wet n Wild. This next one is by Model Zone. This is the Glitter palette. And the next one is another Model Zone, and this one is the Blaze palette. Alright, so the next one is the Smokes palette by Maybelline, and I'm going to declutter this one. Here's another palette that I just put together. These are just some single eyeshadow palettes from Coastal Scents. This next palette is by Hard Candy, and I'm going to declutter this one. This is the Galactic palette. It's another one by Hard Candy. What is this? This is the Look Pro palette, and I'm going to declutter this one. This next one is the Nomad palette by Juvia's Place. This next one is by Too Faced. This is the I Want Candy palette. This next one is by the Nubian. And this is and here it is. This next one is by Makeup Revolution, and this is the Reloaded Red Alert. This is a palette that I put together with some Sephora eyeshadows, and I don't know if I'm going to declutter these. I'm gonna go ahead and I think I'm gonna declutter these. And this thing right here is the key that you use to pop all of these out. This next one is by Gwen Stefani. This is the collab that she did with Urban Decay a long time ago. And the only reason I'm not going to declutter this one is because I like Gwen Stefani's music and I like the packaging. This next one is by Black Radiance. This next one is a Colorpop palette. This is the Element of Surprise. And I'm going to go ahead and declutter this one. This next palette is by Physicians Formula, and this is the Tropical Days palette. And I'm going to go ahead and declutter this one. This next one is by Face Candy. And this is, what is this palette called? The Atlantis, duh. And here it is. And this is by Jean-Michel Basquiat palette. All right, so these are all of the palettes that I'm going to declutter. It's really not that much. It's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 palettes. All right, so anyway, that's pretty much it. Thank you so much for tuning in, and until my next video, smooches.